Hello and welcome back for part 2 of our high horsepower NALS build for the LS Miata. So this thing's currently got a 5.3 aluminum block in it. We're moving to a 6.2 liter aluminum block truck motor, an L92 out of a 07 Cadillac Escalade. So a little bit of a jump in displacement should make a significant amount more power. To me, this engine, the L92 is basically, in my opinion, the best cost per horsepower for any NALS combination. You can spend a lot more money and get a little more power. You can spend a bit less money and get significantly less power, but this is a really good engine for the money. You can find these for $2,000 to $2,500 shipped on eBay all day long. You can spend a little more like I did, closer to $3,000 and get one with 100,000 miles or so. And I mean, for what you're getting, it's amazing. You're getting an aluminum block, which if you saw my weighing video, we weighed iron versus aluminum blocks. That's 100 pounds weight saving. You're getting L92 heads, which these are some of the best factory GM heads you can get. They're better than a lot of aftermarket cathedral port heads. Factory LS3 intakes, $250, brand new. And that is the best GM intake design. And even compared to the aftermarkets, really, it kind of makes the best overall power. So you don't have to buy $3,000 heads. You don't have to buy a $1,000 intake. You get the heads with it. You buy $250 intake. You do a healthy cam and spring combo, and these things make around 500 wheel or around 600 crank, naturally aspirated. So to me, it's kind of the ultimate budget high horsepower NA build. So anyway, I'm really excited about this. It should be a really rowdy upgrade to the old LS Miata. So this thing being a competition drift car, it is going to see a lot of high RPM and a lot of rev limiter. So because of that, I actually did go down a step in cams. I got a Texas Speed Stage 4 originally. We went back to a Stage 3, and then even stiffer valve springs than what we put in here, just to keep us safe. Because basically, if the valve floats or anything like that, your piston hits your valve, it's bad news. Bend a valve, no fun. This slightly less aggressive cam with even stiffer valve springs should give us that cushion we need, because we did do the brass trunnion upgrade to our rocker arms. So our rocker arms are good for 8,500. We've got chromoly push rods. I mean, we've got all the fixings to allow us to rev this thing hard and sit it on a limiter if we have to or want to. So might as well make sure the cam and everything isn't our limiting factor. So we got that in today. It's time to dive back in. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and swap these valve springs out, and then we'll start doing the cam, the lifters, and all that good stuff, and basically just finish the complete assembly of this engine. We've pretty much got everything we need here to get this thing finished up. Got the new valve springs swapped in, so these are good for 670 lift, and we are far below that. They're dual valve springs, fancy titanium retainers. This is some fancy stuff. I don't know, a little too bougie for me, but I like it. So yeah, next order of business, cam in, lifters in, heads on. That's kind of the order of operations. Timing chain, rocker arms, you guys know how it goes. Pretty straightforward with an LS, super easy to build. Alrighty, time to install this butte. Slather her up with some assembly lube. So we got a new camshaft retainer plate to go on. Got this from Texas Speed. If this seal leaks, you will drop oil pressure because it basically holds your oil pressure. So very important to have a good seal there. Okay, we got that pretty close off the rip. Got our new chain. Boom.
Oh, dude, I forgot about Shaggy. Fantastic.
No, I'm like, I don't know, you find the right girl who, like, I don't know, cat lady, or like some
All right, so cam gear's on, cam chain. This is a guide. I guess this is like an LS2 thing. I don't know. All my other ones don't have this, but I mean, it's kind of nice. Keeps the chain from slapping around, just like a Delrin plastic deal. But we're good. Timing marks line up. Cylinder number 1 is at TDC. We ready to rip, boys. So we got everything else pretty much ready to go on. Heads are ready. Rocker arms are ready. We've had our Johnson race lifters soaking in oil. I normally kind of skip this step because in my experience, if the motor is not going to be ran immediately, the oil is just going to kind of leak out, bleed out of the lifter. But I already had this oil for when I did the rocker arms, so I figured, hey, what the hell, why not? Let's do a final check of the lifter bores. Make sure we are debris free. There we go. The lifters definitely seem really nice compared to the stock lifters I'm used to using. All right, one more bank to go. Some more oil on the hands. We'll be ready to move on. Ta-da! Brush lifters, ready to rip. Tighten our trays down, clean the heads, clean the block, surface up good, and then we'll get the heads on. I've also gone through and made sure to oil up the cylinder walls. So this thing will probably smoke a bit at startup, but you'll just be burning off all that oil. We're just putting it in there to keep the cylinder walls clean, fresh, rings, everything. So got a little bit of excess in there. There's a lot of stuff when it comes to putting an engine together that you'll kind of hear, you know, you got to do this, you got to do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. And a lot of this stuff isn't life or death. Like, if you didn't put any oil in the cylinder walls, I'm sure you'd probably be okay. And if you put way too much, you'd probably still be okay. It's just all kind of what makes sense to you, what sounds logical, what sounds like it makes sense. That's kind of what I go off of. You know, prior experience and just, I mean, what makes sense. A bit of oil there. It's very important to have a good clean surface with a multi-layer steel gasket. A little wipe over here. Like I said, this is like my thing. Everyone has that thing that they do when they put an engine together that they feel like they have to do. This is my thing. Making sure the surfaces are clean. Fresh head gasket. Boom. This should be the right cylinder head. Front left. So that's just there so the head doesn't fall off. That would not be fun. All right, cool, heads are on. I'll get started slamming in head bolts and then torquing everything down. Easy enough. So I bought this jar of the ARP Ultra Torque stuff to use on stock head bolts when I reuse stock head bolts. So what I do when I have ARP hardware is I just use this and I save the little packets for other small projects. So it's a lot easier to deal with having the brush. So basically we need to coat up the threads of all of these, start getting this stuff ready, start slamming them in. Well, I ended up having to pull the heads back off and chase all the threads again. I already did. I don't know, this is the second time I've installed ARPs in a while. Last time was on the Dodge Cummins, which was recently But yeah, I've had the same issue with the Dodge where a lot of them just didn't want to go in cleanly. I'd pull them out, check the threads, they'd be fine. I'd put a stock bolt in and it would thread in just fine. So I just did that. I threaded a stock bolt in every hole. They're all fine. So, I don't know. See, like that. It just immediately catches. And then we'll, like, scarily have to crank on it a little bit. And then we kind of get past it and it will clear up. Alright, heads are on, head bolts are in. Time to torque them. Then we can do more fun stuff. Done! With the head torquing at least. Alright, now it's push rod time. Got fancy hardened push rods for this Johnny. Just lube up the tip on each end. Give her a little lube. Drop them in. So these motors are a little different because they have straight and then offset rockers. So it's like every other rocker is offset. So I couldn't remember exactly how they went when I had them off, so I had to rearrange them and put them on here. That's offset. Side down, one to go. All right, now we just spin her over a few times. Make sure all is well with the world. Obviously, if it stops at any point, we got a piston hitting the valve, our timing's off, or our cam's too big. But we know our cam's not too big, because Texas Speed did all the homework for us. We're good to go, as far as that goes. Take a gander, though. Fanciest looking LS cylinder heads I've had. We got CHE trunnion upgrade, we got titanium retainers, dual valve springs, hardened push rods. This thing's a freaking fancy motor. ARP head bolts. We're getting fancy, guys. Getting pretty dang fancy on dirty heads. You know, just you got to have a little slop in there. Pay homage to the old sloppy mechanics. All right, sweet. I'm gonna throw the valve covers on, get that done, and then we're gonna move on to the intake. All right, so we are gonna be changing these valve covers to some sweet Holley Performance dry sump ones, because we don't need an oil fill, because we don't put our oil in here. Obviously it goes in the engine, just not in from the valve cover like this. But anyway, I'm just putting these on to prevent dirt and crap from getting in there. Seal her up. It's always a shame to hide those nice new parts you just put in. All right, that's done. So now we're gonna start diving into the intake. All right, so the last project we can tackle at the moment, we could do the rear main seal, but I gotta pull it off the stand for that. So I'm just gonna wait because we gotta do the rear main, we gotta do that dumbbell, this guy. We gotta do the front cover gasket, front main seal, but we can't bolt the front timing cover on until the crank pulley is in because that's what centers the timing cover. And that's obviously on the Miata currently. So those are the few things we'll have to do once the engine's out of the Miata and we have the parts off it. But anyway, we can get our intake ready. So we've got Deechworks fuel rails, Deechworks injectors. These are really cool. These are actually prototype LS3 rails and they were nice enough to send me them, but these are super sick. These are so nice. So I'm gonna get the injectors in, get the injectors and the rails on the intake, get the intake on the engine. Should be good to go. I don't have bolts. I gotta order bolts. The intake didn't come with bolts and my truck bolts are different, but it did come with gaskets. I was pretty impressed with that. So I went with, I think, 62-pound injectors for this engine. I can't remember now. I got these in a while ago, but obviously I got a lot of these parts before I even have bought the engine yet. They've just been sitting in the parts room, i.e. the living room. Boom. I just gotta throw them on. Man, does that look fancy. I've got to make a little crossover. I have the one on the Miata. I'll probably just steal that off, throw it on here, and then use the FCs for it when we do that, but looking snazzy. All right, last thing, throttle body. So I have this truck one. So we might run this, we might not. It just depends on clearance. This motor being up so high, I think it's gonna cause us issues with the hood. The LS3 one is like flat and the motor's on the side with like a gear thing. So I think the LS3 electric throttle body one will actually give us more clearance than we have now, which would be good because currently my hood hits on the top of this boot. So I think if the throttle body's a little shorter and a little lower, up here, I think we'll gain some clearance, which would be pretty nice. All right, we'll bolt it on. We'll see when we get around to doing the engine. If anything, it'll work for the time being. It'll get us through the initial test driving and stuff. And more importantly, right now, it'll keep our intake closed. We don't just have a big open hole. It always looks like way more like an engine when you actually put an intake manifold on it. I'm hyped for the valve covers we're getting too. Those are gonna look sick. Oh man, I just wanna keep going, but obviously I can't put the pan on until I put the front cover on. I can't put the pan on anyway until I pull the other engine out because we gotta take the pan off that engine because it's a flat dry sump pan. I guess we can go ahead and get the front cover loosely bolted up on there just to give us some protection. The elements. All right, so again, we can't actually tighten this down yet because the crank pulley is what's gonna center it. So you have to wait until the crank pulley is on before you tighten it down. But at least it's on, it's covering stuff up now. Again, another one of those little things makes the engine look way more complete. I do have a new rear cover plate and main seal to go on when we change that dumbbell as well. We'll do that a little later because we got to pull the engine off the stand and then put it back on the stand. It's kind of annoying. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps us up for the engine build. It's like pretty much everything else we need has to come off the Miata's engine to go onto this engine. There's a couple things like the valve covers, coil packs we're getting and stuff like that. But for the most part, everything else needs to come off the Miata engine. I did also go to the parts store and get some new plugs. We got some new plugs on her. So she's about ready to rip, ladies and gents. It's either going to be going in soon, like within the next few days, we'll start tearing into the Miata, or it might be in a few weeks. It just depends on the situation with the Fummins build. I got to dive into that a little more, do some more troubleshooting. And if we can figure it out and we're ready to make more headway on that, then I'll probably be working on that. But if not, we'll get this thing torn down and start swapping it. putting the new engine in and all the other nice new parts we have. We have a bunch of nice new stuff coming for this. So it's going to be kind of like a total revamp of this car. And I mean, kind of either way though, I want to dive into this soon. That way I for sure get it done and back together and ready to go before the season starts back up. If I have all this downtime and I freaking don't have the car up and running when events come back online, I would be pretty sad. So we'll probably dive into this next week, but we'll see. We'll see. Got some work to do on the Subaru, got some diag to do on the Fummins, but you guys know how it goes. But yeah, our 6.2 is ready, well, semi-ready to rip. Like I said, we just got to take the parts off the Miata, put them on here, put it in. So I'll see you guys for that. But for now, that is going to be it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye.